Well, my imprisonment can be put into two phases, divided into two phases. There was my conviction on the 7th of November 1962. And I had just come back from Africa. I had met almost all the prominent leaders in Africa. And I was encouraged by that visit and the support that we received. And I almost went overboard in my attitude towards the prison authorities. And then I was so confident that I challenged them on almost everything. For example, when I was convicted, I insisted on getting proper clothing and proper food. And I threatened to go to court if they did not give me those facilities. And they conceded. But they said to me, well, the other prisoners have accepted the regulations very well. You decide, to be a troublemaker, you are going to stay alone. We are not going to allow you to join others. It was quite a miserable time just to be alone for some months. You wake up, you see only a warder. And I tried to make some friendship with an African warder. And just a few days after I had been convicted, I was already feeling the fact that I can't speak to anybody. So I tried to bribe him with an apple. And I said, Baba, Nancy apple. Or on the phone. And I felt, quite lonely. And after some time, I just couldn't stand it. So I went back to the authorities and I said, well, I'm prepared, to accept your regulations. I want to join Sobukwe and others. They allowed me to do so. So it was to join other political prisoners was a new life for me. And it was only the PAC chaps who were there. But the colleagues in prison, can be very nice. Sobukwe was a very nice person, very fine personality. I have no doubt that if Sobukwe were alive today, the ANC and the PAC would have merged, would have been one organization, because we had begun discussing this matter, and he was very positive in his approach. He looked after me very well, because there were about 7 of them, and I was the only person who was not a member of the PAC. And you could never notice that difference at all, because of his concern, for unity, and also because he was a fine human being and very strong inside. I had a very lovely time with him. So that period had its ups and downs, but eventually when I joined the Sobukwe and others, I felt at home. Although the authorities, of course, did not want us to be together, they put him at the end of the passage, and I was the other end of the passage. And they used to change us, shift us every week. The end of every week, they would take us to a new section as part of security precautions. But Sobukwe and I would be put in different cells, far from each other, with other prisoners between us. And but when I went now to Robben Island, when we were convicted, I was able to join my colleagues now in the Rivonia trial. And we went down together, and subsequently we were joined by others. And that changed the whole scenario. And in spite of the fact that we're in prison, as I have said, I was in the company of very great freedom fighters, talented, and people who were rich in experience. And at the end of every day, you felt that you had gained something from life. Comrade Oliver and I came out of Park Station that morning and bought a newspaper and learned that the National Party had won. And Comrade Oliver said, well, I like this because it is going to put further momentum to the resistance movement. We now know that we have an enemy in power, and difficult days are coming for us. And I think that we're going to have a better opportunity of mobilizing our people to resist this development. It was quite clear that we were going to be in for a very hard time because the National Party had stated very clearly that the policy followed by the United Party was going to put the whites in the country in jeopardy because organizations, institutions like the Native Representative Council were teaching Africans to think as a national group instead of thinking as tribes. And they said that they would abolish this institution, revive tribalism, and keep Africans there, down there. And so when they came into power, it became clear that the African National Congress was going to be put under a very severe test. To start a campaign whose aim is to define so that you could be arrested was something entirely new in the ANC. It was not new as far as the Indian Congress is concerned, because as far back as 1913, you see, they led campaigns in which a large number of people were arrested. And then the Indian Passive Resistance Campaign of 1946 was an epic affair. And so with Africans, this was a real break from the past. Although, as I said, there had been spirited skirmishes as far back as 1918. But to have a campaign whose aim is to take people to prison was something entirely new. And it had a tremendous impact. And for 8,500 people to be arrested at the time in 1952 was no small achievement. In 1953, as we were trying to resist the removal of Safar Town, I made a speech there in which I called for a departure for a non-violent struggle, to a violent struggle, because a non-violent struggle I felt was futile under those conditions. But it was a speech, which was a bit on the reckless side, which had not been properly discussed, by the executive. not even by my close colleagues. It was an angry speech, not a well-considered policy statement. So I was rapped on the knuckles by the National Executive, quite rightly, because I was advocating a departure from accepted policy to something entirely new. And when Comrade Walter and Duma Noke left the country for a conference in Europe, I said to them, look, when you visit China, you must ask them to give us weapons. We must prepare for an armed struggle. But again, this was not something, which was well thought out. I was concerned with the question of just starting the armed struggle without even analyzing what the response of the enemy would be and whether we would be able to mount such a struggle in view of the fact that we had no independent countries around us at the time. So that it was an idea which was not well thought out. But nevertheless, we were beginning to think about this in the 50s already. When the raid took place in September that year, I was in Cape Town. In fact, they came to raid at the offices of New Age. I was there, but they didn't know who I was, and I left. And I was then arrested in the early mornings of the 5th of December by a chap called Warrant Officer Rousseau. I was already practicing as an attorney at the time. And after arresting me, then his colleague had to go and arrest somebody else. So he drove me alone, and I was sitting next to him in the front seat. We were traveling from Orlando, to my office, just opposite the magistrate court in Johannesburg. And we're just the two of us. And I say to him, what gives you the courage, to take me alone? Do you know that I can overpower you and escape? And he says, Mandela, I don't like your joke. I say, it's not a joke. He says, look, I'm armed. I'm carrying a revolver. I say, my friend, that revolver is as yours as it is mine. Do you know that I'm a boxer? Oh, he was very much upset. And when we went to my office, he was very nervous. But I assured him that, no, I'm joking. It's just a joke. But he didn't like the joke at all. The perception that had been created as a result of Sharpeville, which focused all the limelight on the PAC, was that the ANC was an organization of moderates, which was on the way out. The emergence of Umkhonto weSizwe, with acts of sabotage in Johannesburg, Port Elizabeth, and to a lesser extent in Durban, and the statement that we issued on the same day, proclamation that we issued, restored the image of the ANC as the vanguard of the liberation movement in this country. We have, fortunately, men and women who knew about explosives. These were homemade and bought ingredients and mixed them up, and we used them. And Jack Hodgson was very good, and people like Comrade Elias Motsoledi were taught how to manufacture explosives. And they did very well in training others to do so. And we also sent people abroad for professional training. And they came back and trained others, and but using material from which were obtained locally from various chemists and so on. And of course, it later became difficult when the government caught up with what we were doing, and made it difficult, for chemists to make the stuff available to us. But we were able to manage. One day, a friendly Afrikaner warder asked me the question, Mandela, what do you think is going to happen to you in this case? I said to him, they are going to hang us. Now, although I thought this was a real danger, I was really expecting some word of encouragement from him. And I thought he was going to say, man, you see, that can never happen. But he became serious. And then he said, I think you're right, they're going to hang you. And it was not very pleasing information. And again, during the trial, we adjourned for lunch. It was a very hot day, and I slept on a bench. And later, white warder came, woke me up, and he said, Mandela, don't you worry about sleeping now. You are going to sleep for a very, very long time. Again, it was not very nice. And but our approach was one of defiance. Our plea reflected that mood because we said, of course in different words, it is the government that is a criminal and that should be standing in the dock to face the trial. We are not guilty. That was our approach. The mood had been created, the perception had been created that our struggle was reaching a dimension, assuming a dimension, where it could not be crushed. The government had done everything in its power to crush the movement. And the movement, you see, was gaining more strength nevertheless. And the support that we got from all over the world convinced us that the movement had become invincible. In fact, as that was confirmed, although it turned out to be a bit of an exaggeration, as we were being flown to Robben Island, the investigating officer said to one of us, don't worry about this sentence. I can assure you, you won't finish 5 years in prison. You will come out as heroes with women, running around you and everybody wanting your friendship. But we stayed there for 27 years. And when we came out, the women didn't run around us. They remained aloof. So that was an exaggeration. But we believed very strongly that we would not die in jail. We would return. I had no imagination of the type of reception I was going to get outside. Firstly, as you know, I had been isolated from other political prisoners in prison. From November 1984, I lived alone. It was now 1990. And I made a request on the day of my release that the warders who looked after me should be at the gate so that I should be able to shake hands with them and their families. Now, I'd hoped, to meet about at least 30 warders and their families. I had no idea whatsoever of the crowd of journalists that was waiting outside prison. And I was really shocked when I actually saw them. And the warders, that I wanted to greet, were just a tiny part of the crowd. I never even had the opportunity to shake hands with them as I had planned. So I was taken, by surprise by the crowd. And especially now in Cape Town, I had great difficulties in going to the platform. I think it took more than an hour for us just to go through the crowd to be able to go to the platform. And at one time we had to leave for the townships just because the crowd, you see, had blocked all entrances which would lead me to the platform. I was also taken aback by that. And then I stayed with Archbishop Tutu, and that was a Sunday night, and the following morning I had a press conference. I didn't know what a press conference meant. And when I saw that crowd, I must have confessed that I didn't have the courage, the confidence, to speak to them. So all these things, rather took me by surprise. Another politician perhaps would have foreseen and made preparations for this type of reception. But I didn't do it, you see, because I never even thought about it. I never imagined that there would be such crowds, to welcome me. But nevertheless, I was happy to be free.